Jesse rode slowly across the sun-scorched prairie, each step of his tired horse kicking up dust from the cracked earth. The wind had given up hours ago, and the sky above offered no mercy. His canteen bounced lightly at his side, nearly dry, just a swallow left. He hadn't had a decent drink since morning, and even the horses were beginning to stagger under the weight of the heat. The old cowboy looked like the land he rode, worn, weathered, and barely holding on. His boots had split at the seams, his hands were rough from years of rope and rust, and his eyes carried the kind of sadness that came from watching everything you built fall apart. The drought had stolen his cattle. The bank had taken his barn. And the loneliness, the long, aching silence, had taken something from his heart. Still, he rode. Not because there was anything waiting for him out here, but because staying still meant giving up. And Jesse was too stubborn for that. Somewhere deep inside, even beneath all the hurt, he held on to the idea that maybe something could change. Maybe the rains would come. Maybe tomorrow would be different. As he followed the path of a long-dead stream, his eyes scanned the land like they always did, more out of habit than hope. But then, just ahead, he saw something that made him pull the reins hard. There, by the dried streambed, was someone sitting. A girl. Alone. At first, he thought she might be hurt. Or worse. But as he got closer, he saw her move slowly, lifting her head to meet his gaze. Her eyes were red, her lips cracked from thirst. She looked like a ghost of someone who had once been full of life, and now was barely holding on. She didn't speak. Neither did he. For a long second, they just looked at each other, both surprised to find another soul in a place that felt abandoned by God. Without a word, Jesse dismounted. His joints cracked as his boots hit the dirt. He unclipped his canteen and held it out. "It ain't much," he said quietly. "But it's cold." The girl stared at it, then at him. She hesitated, maybe out of pride, maybe fear, but then took it with trembling hands. She drank, slow at first, then desperate. Jesse watched without saying a thing. When she finished, she handed it back, eyes wide with something more than gratitude. Something softer. Something almost like wonder. He nodded, then looked away, as if embarrassed by his own kindness. "You out here alone?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Got lost. Left home. Thought I could make it somewhere new." Jesse scratched his beard, thinking. She was young, no older than 20, but there was something heavy behind her voice. Something he understood. "Well," he said, "seems like we've both been running from things." She gave a faint smile. They sat together in the fading light. No plans. No promises. Just two strangers who found each other when they both needed something more than just water. Jesse didn't know it then, but that moment would change everything. The land would heal. The rains would come. But even before that, even in the heat and dust, something already had begun to bloom between them. It wasn't loud or fast. It was quiet. Like the kind of love that sneaks up on you while you're busy surviving. And in a world that had taken so much from both of them, a single shared sip of water became the beginning of something they didn't know they were still capable of. Hope. The trail curved gently around a bend where the dry streambed narrowed, and the dust swirled in lazy spirals with every small breath of wind. Jesse's horse slowed on its own, sensing something unusual. That's when he saw her. She was sitting alone in the dust, half hidden behind a clump of brittle brush. A girl, young, maybe 20 or so, curled up with her knees drawn tight to her chest. Her dress was torn at the hem, the fabric once white but now streaked with red dirt. Her arms were thin, and her shoulders slumped forward like she hadn't stood in hours, maybe longer. No hat. No horse. No gear. Just her. Jesse stopped and stared, not out of fear, but surprise. He hadn't seen another soul in days, especially not out this far from the road. For a moment, she didn't notice him. Her eyes were locked on nothing, staring across the streambed like she could still see water flowing through it. But there was only dust now, and a silence that wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. He called out softly, "Ma'am?" She blinked, slow and unsure, and turned her head. When their eyes met, Jessie felt something shift in his chest. Her gaze wasn't sharp or scared, it was hollow. Like something inside her had been taken, piece by piece, and she hadn't even had the strength to fight back. He could have asked what she was doing here. Could have demanded to know why she had no horse, no food, no companion. But he didn't. Instead, he climbed down from the saddle, every movement gentle, so he wouldn't startle her. The ground crunched under his boots as he walked toward her, his own breath shallow from the heat. He reached into his coat and pulled out his canteen. The metal was warm from the sun, but inside were the last few gulps of water he'd been saving for himself. He didn't speak again. Just crouched beside her and held the canteen out with one callous hand. She looked at it. Then at him. And then back at it. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only a soft gasp of air, as if speaking required more energy than she had left. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she took the canteen. Jessie watched her lift it to her mouth and sip, slow at first, cautious, like she thought it might vanish. Then she drank deeply, her throat moving with each swallow. Her hands shook, and when she finally pulled it away, her eyes were wet. She handed it back, her fingers brushing his for just a second. He nodded. "You're all right now?" She said nothing. But in that silence, something passed between them, not words, not gratitude. Something quieter. Something Jessie hadn't felt in a long time. He sat down beside her in the dust. Two strangers. No promises. No explanations. Just a cowboy who'd given his last drops of water, and a girl who hadn't known if anyone would ever stop for her again. The sky began to soften as the day faded, trading its blistering blue for warm hues of gold and amber. Jessie had led them to a lone cottonwood tree, thin, scraggly, but still standing. It offered just enough shade to rest without choking on heat and dust. His horse grazed lazily nearby, too tired to wander. Clara sat cross-legged now, her back against the trunk, her face half-lit by the sinking sun. Jessie didn't press her for answers. He knew silence could say more than questions ever could. So he sat beside her with his hat low over his brow, hands resting on his knees, letting the wind carry whatever it wanted to carry. After a while, her voice came, soft, uncertain. "My name's Clara." He looked up but said nothing, letting her speak at her own pace. "I left 3 nights ago. Couldn't stay no more. Not with him." Her eyes stayed on the horizon, as if she were talking more to herself than to him. "He wasn't kind. Not like he was in the beginning. Started locking doors. Took the key with him. I told myself I'd wait it out, be brave. But bravery started to feel like just surviving." Jessie turned his head, watching her carefully. Not with pity, but with something quieter. Respect, maybe? Recognition. She took a breath, her voice steadying. "I don't got family to go back to. Don't got money either. Just started walking." The wind moved through the cottonwood's leaves with a whisper, like it was listening too. Jessie nodded slowly. "I ain't got much myself. Lost the ranch last spring. Sold near everything. But sometimes, what you walk away from is heavier than what you carry." Clara looked at him then, really looked, her eyes softening, her shoulders dropping ever so slightly. "You're the first person to talk to me kind in I don't know how long," she whispered. A quiet passed between them again. But it wasn't empty this time. It was full of something unspoken, trust, maybe. Or the beginning of it. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched across the earth like reaching arms. Their shadows touched first. Jessie glanced at the canteen between them, then back at her. "We'll head west come morning. There's a river past the ridge. Might be more folks out that way. Work. A start." She nodded. "I'd like that." And then she smiled. Not big. Not bright. But real. And in that moment, Jessie realized something simple and true. Sometimes the world gives you someone when you least expect it. Not to fix you, but to remind you that you're not the only one broken. The sun sank lower, and the wind picked up just enough to cool their skin. Two strangers, sitting beneath a stubborn cottonwood, on the edge of nowhere. But somehow, in that place, they both felt a little less alone. The night was thick and quiet, the kind of silence that settles over the land when even the wind is too tired to stir. Jesse had cleared out a little space in his wagon, laying down an extra blanket he kept rolled beneath the seat. It wasn't much, but it was clean and warm, and Clara had earned more than comfort, she'd earned trust. "You can sleep in here tonight," he said softly, nodding toward the open back of the wagon. "It's not fancy, but it's dry." Clara looked at him, eyes reflecting the starlight like calm water. "You sure?" He smiled. "I'd feel worse not offering." She was about to climb in when a low rumble rolled across the sky. Distant thunder, slow, steady, and unfamiliar. Jesse turned his head toward the clouds. Another rumble followed, closer this time. Then, the unmistakable scent hit them both, wet dirt, carried on a breeze that hadn't been there moments before. Rain. A single drop splashed on the tip of Clara's nose. She looked up, startled. Another fell on Jesse's hat, then another. And then, as if the sky could wait no longer, it came pouring down in heavy, cold sheets. The parched earth drank greedily, steam rising as the soil cracked and softened under the weight of it. Jesse threw his head back and let the rain hit his face. "Well, I'll be—" Clara stood still for a second, then burst into laughter. Pure, ringing laughter. She spun once in the rain like a child, arms stretched wide, dress clinging to her from the downpour. Jesse watched her, then joined in, boots sloshing in the quickly forming mud, his laughter deeper, warmer than it had been in years. For a few wild moments they danced under that sky. Two people who had nothing left to lose and, somehow, everything to gain. Their clothes were soaked, their hair plastered to their skin, and their hands found each other without planning to. Fingers laced, hearts pounding, and not from fear, but from something new. Hope. It had been so long since either of them had felt it, they almost didn't recognize it. But there it was, not just in the rain, not just in the laughter, but in the way Jesse looked at her, like maybe this storm was meant for them. Like maybe the land hadn't given up after all. He pulled her close, shielding her face with his hand. "Guess the sky had better timing than we did." She laughed again, leaning into his chest, shivering but alive. "I thought I'd never feel this again," she whispered. "Feel what?" he asked. She looked up at him through rain-drenched lashes. "Safe." The words struck him like lightning. Not loud, just true. As the rain soaked into the earth around them, filling cracks and washing away dust, Jesse knew this wasn't just weather. It was a beginning. A renewal. The kind you don't expect. The kind you don't get twice. What had started as a shared sip of water had become something deeper. Something they both needed more than they ever realized. And standing there in the storm, muddy boots and all, they held on to each other like maybe, just maybe, the worst had passed. The stream sang again. Weeks had passed since that night the skies finally opened, and now the once cracked earth pulsed with color and life. The streambed, once dry and silent, now gurgled with clear, cool water, dancing over smooth stones and feeding the wildflowers that had sprung up along its edges. Purple lupin, yellow sunbursts, and soft white daisies swayed in the breeze, as if the land itself was exhaling after a long, held breath. Jesse stood at the edge of the stream with a wooden bucket in hand, his sleeves rolled up, boots damp from the soft earth. Beside him, Clara crouched low, her fingers trailing through the ripples as she smiled at the way the water cooled her skin. She'd braided her hair that morning, tying it back with a faded red ribbon Jesse had found in an old saddlebag. The sight of her, so calm, so steady, still stunned him sometimes. It was the same spot where they'd first locked eyes, where she had sat like a forgotten ghost, and where he, with nothing to offer but a half-empty canteen, had stopped anyway. Now, they stood here together. Whole. He reached down and gently touched her hand, letting his thumb brush her knuckles. She looked up at him with that soft, knowing smile, the one that didn't need words. The kind that said, "I remember too." Life still wasn't easy. There were fences to mend, meals to stretch, and wounds that hadn't fully healed. But something had changed. Within them, and around them. The land had softened. So had Jessie's heart. Clara stood, holding her full bucket. She looked around at the wild flowers and the shimmering stream. "Hard to believe this was dust not too long ago," she murmured. Jessie nodded. "Funny how something can seem dead one day, then bloom the next." Their eyes met again. No fear. No pretending. Just peace. As they walked back toward the wagon, buckets swaying gently at their sides, the sound of the stream followed them, steady, alive. It had taken just one act of kindness, one choice to give instead of walk away, to change the course of two lives. From dried dust had come living water. And from that water, love.